The All Elite Podcast. Covering all the latest news and results from the AEW.
Wait a minute. Sean Spears? Spears with a chair shot right to the side of the head of Cody.
This is pro wrestling analysis as you've never heard before.
Deathly Hallows!
Might be it.
1, 2, 3, Kasabian!
Coming to you every single week. So without any further delay, let's go all in and get the show started right now.
Hello and welcome everybody to AEW AFTERSHOCK. I'm your host, as always, Zach Perez at Spots High on Twitter, and I'm very excited to bring you this episode after a crazy week of Dynamite on TNT once again. And I think this may have been one of the most completely all-rounded episodes. We had some crazy matches, some crazy segments, a great face-off between SCU and Le Champion, or Le Bitch, as Scorpio Sky liked to refer to him. And Scorpio, you need a little refresher in your French, my friend. It's actually Le Chien. I Googled it. But crazy week of Dynamite, awesome start to it, and just all around craziness. But I do want to address a few things right off the bat here. So I am going to be starting to bring more articles to you guys, focusing more on my writing side of things. Doesn't mean I'm going to be shying away from this side of things at all. As a matter of fact, I may also be bringing another announcement to the podcast side of things sometime in the near future as well. But I am going to be bringing some more articles out. I'm going to be publishing with a new site, which I'm very excited to start working with. Some great writers over there, some awesome editors. So I'm going to be working with Last Word on ProWrestling.com, also Last Word on Sports.com. So some great people over there. Definitely check out the awesome articles that they have. I've shared some on my social media already, but some really awesome people. Great community of writers and editors, so very excited to get things started, and I'm going to be starting with Survivor Series coming up this week. Weird stuff going on, the NXT brand supremacy force stuff that's going on, so going to be some very interesting stuff to get into, but I'm going to be focusing on previewing the Fiend versus Daniel Bryan match, which I think, chef's kiss is just the best thing going right now in terms of the main roster product, just strictly focusing on, a feud that's just between two people that's on Raw or SmackDown. I think that's the best thing that they have going and is probably one of the most interesting things to talk about. So definitely keep an eye out for that sometime in the very near future here, as Survivor Series is right around the corner here this weekend. So going to be a crazy week of wrestling, and it was definitely a crazy night of Dynamite. So I definitely want to jump into that as we get going here. So first things first was Nick Jackson and Rey Fenix kicking things off here. What a match that we had between the two. Of course, Nick Jackson, not normally a singles competitor. One of his first matches that he's competed in as a singles competitor in years. So basically, he went toe-to-toe with Rey Fenix throughout this entire match. Basically like a human Konami code, up, up, down, down, left, right. It's just constant motion. Move for move, they just match each other. Going super kick for super kick, drop kick for drop kick. I mean, every motion is no wasted motion. Just constantly matching each other spot for spot. You have Rey Fenix working the ropes like they're tight ropes at a circus. I mean, the man is phenomenal. And I know that they're really trying to push the Lucha Brothers as heels at the end of the match here. We did end up having Rey Fenix take the victory here. Spoiler alert, if you didn't already see it. But what are you listening for, right? They did end up having him take the victory, so he did end up refusing the handshake. So they are pushing the heel tactics with the Lucha Brothers, but I just don't see that working when you have the way that Rey Fenix is in the ring, unless you have him do 450 splash into an eye poke. I don't really see how you can make his style influenced into being a heel. It's just so flashy, so over the top, and it garners such a response from the crowd. I just don't see how you can morph that without cheapening it. So we'll see how they do it. There's definitely ways around it. It's just I'm afraid, because the way that I see his style in the ring right now, it's just so amazing to watch, and he's easily one of the best wrestlers in the world right now. And like I said, in this matchup, Nick Jackson went move for move with him and step for step, so it's worth noting that a lot of people don't give the Bucks enough credit for how talented they are as well. So definitely worth mentioning that this was one of the most technically sound ring psychology on-point matches that I've seen across the board from AEW. Just beautifully done, and just reminded me a lot of the Rollins versus AJ Styles match at Money in the Bank, in that it's just constant countering, outmaneuvering each other, and just very smart tactical wrestling, in the sense that it's just playing on the crowd's emotions of counter wrestling, and just looking at what the other one's doing and knowing how to time it perfectly. So brilliant stuff, in just a phenomenal way to kick off a show, and I don't expect to see a lot more of this in the future, of having the Young Bucks do singles competition, but having this one-off experience was a great experience for everybody involved, and I'm sure that Nick Jackson loved the chance to prove himself in singles competition, as did Rey Fenix. But, that being said, both of them are purveyors of fantastic tag wrestling, and I think they're going to look to continue to push that forward in AEW and in their careers respectively. So I don't expect to see too much more of them going out on their own in singles matches, but this proves that they can do that. So at the same time, it was a very worthwhile experience to have, but at the same time, don't expect to see it very much again, because they are tag team wrestlers and they want to push that forward. They're not choosing to ignore it like the WWE tends to do. I mean, look at the Viking Raiders, who basically just have vanity belts. There's really no purpose to them having the titles. They don't defend them against anybody but jobbers on a given week most of the time. I know we just had RKO-Shay, or Ricochet with the RKO symbol, if you want to call them that, but it just, there's no real point to having them have it on any given week. It just doesn't feel real. It's just, I know it's pro wrestling, it's kayfabe and all that, but it just doesn't feel like there's a point. But over here, tag team wrestling feels like a big part of the product, and especially when you have guys like the Lucha Brothers and the Young Bucks, it feels like there's a purpose to it, and it feels like it's a huge part of it, and there's a big match feel every time you get those guys squaring up. So props to that match. And then it's worth noting that at the same time that we probably could also get out of this Matt Jackson versus Pentagon, but there probably does need to be some build up to that, and of course, Matt Jackson does have to come back healthy. So, but anyway, moving on down the card here, we did end up having the women's match of the night, which was Hikaru Shida taking on Britt Baker, and I think that we probably saw the most solid performance from Britt Baker. I think a lot of that was Shida taking the best out of Britt Baker. Also, the color from the nose, I think she probably broke her nose a little bit, or made it just, gotten some color produced out of it, maybe hit it good enough to get some bleeding going. But basically, that definitely helped it. It helped sell a lot of the offense that was going on, and sell the kind of underdog type of mentality that Britt had in this, and she ended up taking the loss, which helped sell that as well and make it look more believable, in that she has been dominant so far, and this was Shida coming from behind, but realistically Shida is the better competitor, so this still managed to make Baker look strong in what would probably otherwise have just made more sense to have Hikaru take this win anyway. So a good back and forth contest. A lot of people have given a lot of discredit to the women's division, but I think this was a solid all-around match. Was it something that was, amazing? Was it mind-blowing? No. There was some good back and forth action here, and I think comparably to some of the women's matches that you get over in WWE, I would say it at least holds similar weight. There's definitely a lot to work on in terms of Britt Baker's offense. I think her striking in particular is a little too weak, but I think Shida did a good job of masking that in this matchup, and I think that overall this was a very good match, but still a weak point of AEW would have to be their women's division. I mean, we got no follow-up from the whole Brandy Rhodes thing from last week. Nothing happened here with that, so I was kind of expecting something to happen with that, especially if she did some social media postings of herself in that witch doctor-y outfit thing that she's got going on. So we'll have to see, where that progresses from here. But, it's just kind of nitpicking a little bit, but it is something that's a little bit of a glaring weakness at this point. So maybe we'll get some signings in the future that'll cleanse that a little bit. But right now it's a little bit of a weakness. So hopefully that'll get addressed somewhere down the line. But for now, that's something that is definitely being poked at quite a bit by people all across the Twitterdom, if you will. So, moving on down the card here, though, we ended up next having this Dynamite Dozen Battle Royal, which ended up being a very entertaining matchup. I was kind of dreading having the Battle Royal. A lot of the Battle Royals in AEW have not been particularly eye-grabbing. After a while, they kind of feel like they're dragging on too long, but a lot of this was helped along by Billy Gunn making an appearance on television, which really surprised me. Did not expect that whatsoever. No prior announcement, none of that. So that was a pretty huge moment, and it was pretty entertaining to see the crowd really take on to the fact that Billy Gunn was here, and you could tell the crowd appreciates who it was, and they've been watching for a while. There's a lot of marks in the crowd, if you will, and they're definitely showing their appreciation for somebody they've watched for a while and is a veteran of the industry. So that's always nice to see a crowd giving appreciation to somebody and not just going, oh, who's this old guy, So good to see wrestling fans giving appreciation to Billy Gunn and really giving him a huge pop, and probably just as big as anybody in that night. So very good to see. And there were some great spots with him involved as well. They had a nice little pile-on moment where he kind of just threw everybody off like a superhero, so that was pretty awesome. Looked like he was in like a suit of armor or something, like a mech suit, so that was a pretty awesome moment that he had there. Then you had him taking the brutal shin kicks from Orange Cassidy. Oh, and then earlier before that, we had Sonny Kiss twerking in front of him to go ahead and call back to the ass man gimmick that he had, and MJF played the heel beautifully, tossing out Sonny Kiss and Orange Cassidy, which got a warning from Billy Gunn. He gave him the saying, you ruined my fun twice. So that was a nice, very good job of both of them playing their roles beautifully in this Battle Royal and having some fun with it, and neither of them, taking it too seriously and having a little bit of fun with the stipulation. Battle Royals are not always, especially when you have everybody in the ring all at once, you want to have a little bit of fun with it and not be too serious, because really it's organized chaos in a lot of Battle Royals. So doing that in a way that is entertaining is smart, and that's exactly what they did here. We ended up having the finish. And then also worth mentioning at the beginning as well, as we talked about the Lucha Brothers before, we ended up having the continuation of SCU versus the Lucha Brothers, as Christopher Daniels came down dressed as Rey Fenix and ended up getting Pentagon eliminated as he removed the mask and ended up revealing himself as Christopher Daniels, and they ended up quickly dispersing Pentagon. So that was a nice little moment to kick things off as well. But ended up the matchup came to a conclusion as Jungle Boy was in the ring with Hangman Page, so it seemed as if that was the end of the match. However, MJF had sneakily ran himself underneath the ropes as opposed to over them, and quickly tossed Jungle Boy over the top with a little assistance from Wardlow at the end there. So that was a nice little ending to the matchup. Plays the heel role very well for MJF, and very likely he'll end up with a nice little ring out of all of this and play up the heel factor very nice, and basically do what King Corbin should be doing over at WWE. Worth mentioning that, WWE backstage this week kind of crapped all over the King Corbin stuff. So basically what they should be doing right over there is what they should be doing with MJF if he wins this ring. So that's the idea. But, running on down the card a little more here, this ended up leading into Chris Jericho's big announcement that he had been teasing on social media, Le Champion Celebration, that is going to be happening next week in Chicago, is what he ended up debuting out. And it was a very interesting segment. Very cool that they are pushing Scorpio Sky when his momentum is at its highest. I mean, he went toe-to-toe with Chris Jericho on the microphone with a very awesome, entertaining segment. Just beautiful stuff. I mean, the back and forth about his high school crush and the Big Butts and I Cannot Lie line, and just awesome back and forth. On their toes, unscripted, and that's exactly what I'm looking for when I watch wrestling promos. I just did a write-up about how, WWE's promos are really burying a lot of their talent, and it's true. The writers are too involved in the product over there, and it suffers as a result of it. So many wrestlers could have their own personalities, but WWE chooses not to let them, and that is an issue. And you look at a guy like Scorpio Sky, and his personality right now is the freest it's ever been. And to that point, I want to just go back a little bit in time here, go into the vaults a little bit, and play you a little something. I found something very deep in the vaults, as a matter of fact, from Wrestling Society X. And this kind of shows you a little of what might have been if things had continued along the darker road for Scorpio Sky. So this is basically, if you don't remember Wrestling Society X, it was this little failed experiment that happened over on MTV. It was kind of like punk rock and wrestling mixed if it was on an LSD trip. I don't know exactly how to describe it to you if you haven't seen it. It's just so over the top. It's kind of something similar to Lucha Underground, I guess, before it happened, but it's not even close to the same vein at the same time. It's very hard to describe if you haven't watched it. It's just so over-the-top studio wrestling. It's really insane. But Scorpio Sky was involved with that, and probably was in line for a push in that company back then before everything came to a close. And on an unaired episode, he actually got a promo in, before Vampiro ended up interrupting. And there was a moment that happened that felt very much like something that may have happened in the WWE in the Attitude Era. Something kind of Midian-like. So I want to just play that clip and how far we have come, and I'm sure that Scorpio Sky is glad to be in an AEW ring now and not in a WSX ring anymore doing what he did that night. So let me just roll that for you. It's about a minute and a half or so, and I'm sure you will find it quite entertaining, although he may not. So enjoy.
And coming up in just mere moments, it's going to be the Filth and the Fury taking on Team Dragon Gate in the steel cage time bomb exploding deathmatch. Wow, but let's go for one of the up-and-coming rising stars of this business, standing by with the lovely Lacey.
I'm here now with Scorpio Sky.
Lacey, do you see this award? Hey, I need to talk to you.
Excuse me, this is my time. And last I checked, you weren't really in a position of power around here anymore, pal.
What's going on here, Chris?
What the hell is... That's...
Wait, is that
Hero! That's the former WSX champion, How the hell did this? Oh my God, he was naked. Scorpio's naked. You just saw his wiener. What is going on here?
Oh, the refs can't even control him.
What the hell happened that he's freaking out on? I gotta say it. What the is going on?
I have to agree with the commentators on that, on a good ending note there. Yep, we did have Scorpio Sky getting his pants ripped off by Vampiro in one of the strangest segments, I think, in wrestling history, as Vampiro just lazily chokeslammed the entire Wrestling Society X roster for no real apparent reason after that. So if you do want to find that clip, it's basically the last episode that went unaired for Wrestling Society X. They went from 2007 to 2007, and they had one season that aired on MTV. It was basically just a kind of an experiment that happened and ran as if it were a regular television show, just produced for television, and failed. Didn't do well, so didn't gain the viewership it needed, so it got canceled before it even finished running the first season, so thus the season finale did not air. Ended up having a crazy final match, actually, with Teddy Hart and M-Dog 20 in a exploding cage match. Not a great match by any means, but some entertaining little spots in there, so worth checking out overall if you're interested in some weird wrestling history that happened back in 2007. A weird time in general for wrestling, not too long after we had the ECW revival and all that, but I could get on a tangent forever talking about weird wrestling history, but that just goes to show you how far Scorpio Sky has come, as he now ended up having one of the most interesting moments, I think, in AEW history so far, as he basically kind of did a little Bugs Bunny trickery and some reverse psychology, and had basically him talk his way into getting a title shot next week for Jericho's AEW championship. Basically saying, I don't deserve it, and then after Jericho said, no, you're going to have it, you're going to take this title match, he pulled him in and said he's been waiting 15 years for this title shot. So, it's been a long road to get here, and it's very smart on AEW's part that they're going right into this title match and just doing it, striking while the iron is hot, and just going right after it, because I think that if they do go all in and have Scorpio Sky take the belt, it will be brilliant. And I think that the reasoning is both the fact that Scorpio Sky is very much talented enough, but it will also look great in the sense that you're having a title change on a television show. Yes, it's very early, but it's also putting over talent that is very new to a lot of people. Scorpio Sky is a veteran of the industry, but in terms of the mainstream audience, it would be very new. In terms of reading the headline and saying Scorpio Sky beat Chris Jericho on Thanksgiving Eve for the AEW title on a television show, it'll be a shocking headline. And also, just the history of wrestling and not being very progressive, that'll also help a lot of things as well. So I think that it's just a very, very smart move by AEW and very smart booking, and I think that Scorpio Sky is the right person to do it. I mean, the barbs that he had back and forth with Jericho in this were amazing. I mean, the "la bitch" line, brilliant. Although he might need to brush up on his French a little bit. It's actually "le chien," as I Googled. Chris Jericho taught me how to Google last week on Dynamite, so I'm getting pretty good at this sort of stuff. So, but this segment was just pure gold. It just start to finish. We ended up having the interruption from the Inner Circle and the beatdown moment, and then Nakazawa and Cutler just were bodies to get thrown around so that they could look like they were trying to help it, but they're AEW's Mikey Whipwrecks. They really want to help, but that they're just going to get their ass beat, so that's what they're there for. And then that's it's a nice little gesture, but you know that they're there to take a few bumps. That's the end of the day what they're all about. But Jurassic Express ran down, and same thing with Marco Stunt and Jungle Boy. Really, they took a few lumps and really just led out to the Jake Hager and Luchasaurus stare down, which was epic. Maybe not a lot of people believed in Jake Hager, but, myself, I saw him at Northeast Wrestling, and I say this all the time, but We the People that he garnered out of that crowd was phenomenal. I mean, so many people just stuck to that and have really just never let his popularity die. I mean, so many people still are just enamored with him from his time doing that gimmick, and he's just got such a charismatic personality. It's a little hidden behind this big hurt thing, but the segment with Jericho being allergic to saying sorry in this and turning to him to say sorry, it just works so well. And the fact that he could keep the straight face during Jericho's promos is a testament to him, so great job to him, and this was just awesome. And Jake Hager versus Luchasaurus, put it in my veins and just inject it for days, please. I want an IV of that match. So that was amazing, and everything about this was just pure entertainment factor dialed up to 11, and I loved every minute of it. And Peter Avalon versus Luchasaurus match, which was, your quick little squash match. Yes, I know I've been a little bit harping on the squash matches, but this was beautiful to me. I mean, he just kicked the hell out of him, and then just hit his nice little tombstone driver finish, which, if that's his finishing move, I really like that. It's like a sit-out tombstone flatline. I don't know quite what you want to call it, but it looks beautiful, and I'm sure he'll come up with a very nice name for it. Maybe, like the Jurassic Slam or something like along those lines, but need a little more creativity behind my thought process there. But that was a nice little moment there for Luchasaurus, and he always gets a huge pop, and I think that having him in these Goldberg style squash matches is perfect for his character, and I think that running him through a bunch of these guys, maybe even on AEW Dark, would be a very smart move going forward. But next up, we did end up having the Matt Travis Memorial match, and this was very classy by AEW. Very nice to see that they paid tribute to the victimization of Matt Travis at the hands of the hit-and-run driver. And it was a little disappointing in terms of the match quality, but in terms of what the match meant, it was phenomenal. The fact that they took the time out to let these two teams kind of have this slow building matchup to pay homage to somebody who got them involved in wrestling and really got them started and got them to this point in their career. It was a beautiful thing to see. So even though the match wasn't quite the high octane match that you might expect from these two going up against each other, that'll happen later in their careers, I'm sure. This was just a nice moment, and to see Private Party go over in this, it was nice as well. And I think that it was very smart, and I think that Private Party is getting better with each match, and they might still be a little green, but I think they have a very good future, and overall a decent match, but in terms of what it actually meant, it was an amazing match. So very, very nice to see, and I think that they have a lot left in the tank for the future. So nice ring psychology, smartly told story, and like I said, the actual real life story behind it is so much more memorable for what they did. So very nice to see AEW doing all the right things in terms of what they're doing for their talent. So very classy. But if you want to talk about going the opposite direction of classy, not in a bad way whatsoever, I'm very much for this type of stuff. The ending of the night was so phenomenal. I mean, we ended up having the end of the night was the Jon Moxley versus Darby Allin match, and my God, this match was amazing from start to finish, with Darby Allin jumping out and going after Moxley. The body bag entrance by Darby Allin, my God, that was amazing. It just, the vaudevillian-esque silent picture opening and him, getting carried out by all those people and just silently sitting in the body bag for a moment before unzipping himself. It was just genius stuff, and then popping out on the skateboard and riding down. Darby Allin is one of the most unique and brilliant characters going right now in wrestling, and he just sells it so beautifully. He's got this lone wolf gimmick, and it feels very poetic in an unspoken way, and it just works. And him going right after Moxley to start it off and jumping through the ropes at him, it just felt like a blood feud without even telling a story, and I loved it. I loved the fact that they were both just basically, throwing strikes and stiffly working against each other, and fighting all through the crowd with each other, and it just really felt like they were going at it, and it makes me really regret not going down to Poughkeepsie to watch their Northeast wrestling match, whether it was pouring out that day or not. I really wish I would have went and seen that when it was the first time that they made it against each other, but it is what it is. And I know Mox was that was when he was still suffering with that elbow injury, so it probably wasn't as action packed as this one was. So this match was beautiful chaos in a lot of ways, and I know that there's going to be another matchup with them down the line, because this was just too good not to do on a pay-per-view. I mean, you just had the coffin drop moment where he went for the coffin drop and he got reversed into a rear naked choke, and then a pin attempt. It was just such beautiful wrestling in an otherwise very brawl-like atmosphere. It just shows how much depth both of these wrestlers have and the type of stories that they can tell in a very angry brawl type of match at the same time. It's just amazing wrestling, and really kind of the epitome of what these type of characters can be. It's kind of the Bruiser Brody types, that really get the craziness to be more than just wildly swinging and looking like a savage in the ring. It's really making technical wrestling a part of being a crazy person in the ring, and it's just done in a masterful way by both Darby and Moxley. And they sold the fact that Moxley was a bigger man throughout this, and tossing him around a bit and threw him inside of the body bag and stomping away at him, and it just great stuff. And I love the fact that they used the body bag in his matches, and there have been a few different moments, like when he went up against Cody, that he's used it, and maybe he's got some weird fetish and that's why he brings it around or something, who knows. But I have to say that it's something unique, and I like the fact that he's used it a few times, and it's kind of a callback, and it's something that's unique to him, and it's something that you can take away from his character and feel like that's a part of him. So I like the fact that it was brought up here, but it didn't end up being the finish either. You ended up having the Avalanche Paradigm Shift DDT, and that looked beautiful, and you could even see it in Moxley's eyes as he hit it, that it looked beautiful. He just had a sickening look on his face, that he was just satisfied with the thud and the hit that it had and the impact. So that was an awesome moment, and I don't think a lot of people noticed that Moxley, right beforehand, when the moment happened where they were up on the ropes and the link of the rope, he actually looks like he might have actually really broken his hand or broken a finger or something like that, because when Darby stepped on his hand and he came down afterwards, that really looked broken. I mean, when he raised his hands afterwards, he looked like he had a dolphin fin. I mean, the two things are together, it just did not look like a human hand by the end of that match. I'll have to go back through and look at the clip again, but first reaction, I mean, I definitely don't think that it was just the beers that I was having last night that made it look that way. It was gruesome looking, and especially that spot that he had where he was stepping directly on his hand and kind of twisted off, and the ref came up to him and looked like he kind of pulled at his finger, and John didn't look like he liked that too much. He looked very upset by the reaction that he had. So I think that there's something to that. So if that is the case, hopefully it's just a very quick fix, and maybe it was just a dislocated finger or a couple dislocated fingers. But man, if that is the case, he wrestled this match like nothing was even going on. So amazing contest, and what a way to end the night, and just beautiful, crazy, chaotic wrestling at its finest, and that's really defines Jon Moxley's 2019, or really since he left WWE, I should say. But Dynamite just really was Dynamite. I hate to be so corny and punny with it, but it really just delivered from start to finish, and I'm really looking forward to next week in Chicago. And on that point, I do want to bring up some rumors that have been circulating recently about Chicago and the likelihood that Marty Scurll might make his debut with AEW in Chicago. There was some teasing at the end of the Being the Elite episode with what looks like a photo of him with them, with the Elite. When Paige ends up leaving the Elite at the end of the episode, he turns away a photo that looks like Marty is in that photo with them. So that is an interesting little callback. Also note that there is an umbrella at the top of the shelf when he's exiting as well. I know just an umbrella, but of course he is the Umbrella Man. So, little callbacks. And there was a leaked image of a shirt that went up on AEW linking him as well. So a lot of things tying together, and if that is the case, then a lot of different directions they can go with that as well. Does he join the Elite to bolster them now that they have what seems like both Kenny and Hangman leaving the group? Could be a very interesting way to go. Do they maybe redo some sort of version of Bullet Club as a response to the Elite kind of falling apart? Maybe that's the way they do it. There's a lot of different angles that they can approach it now. Maybe everybody kind of splits their own ways now, and Marty joins up with Hangman and they form a tag team, or there's a lot of different angles they can play it, and I think that going forward, Being the Elite will start to tell more of the story, which is, I think, something that a lot of fans have been craving. So that will be something to keep an eye out on, and if I do get this right, which I hope that I do because I would love to see Marty in AEW, then I am very much looking forward to Chicago next week, and my predictions, just to throw them out there, if they do come true, would be next week we see Marty debuting in AEW, and we also see Scorpio Sky as the new AEW champion. So, if my bold predictions come true, like I said, I've been your host, Zach Perez, at Spots High on Twitter, and if I'm wrong, you can call me a bumbling idiot. That's just fine. But until next time, goodbye and good night.
Goodbye and good night. Goodbye and good night. Goodbye and good night. Goodbye and good night.